Welcome to the Heady NJ podcast, where we bring you up close and personal with cannabis influencers in New Jersey and beyond. I am your host, Brian Walsh, founder of Heady NJ. Through our guest interviews and informational segments, we will be bringing you everything you need to know about the cannabis industry in New Jersey. We will discuss the latest in news, culture, and lifestyle information in the world of cannabis right here on our podcast. With cannabis legalization just around the corner in our state, there isn't a more important time to know what is going on. Hey everyone. Today we're going to discuss a lot of really exciting topics that can help you in your everyday life. Specifically, we're going to discuss a current hot topic in the health and wellness space called biohacking. Hacking computers, hacking smartphones, hacking email. You've heard about all those, but hacking your body? Hacking your life? At first, it sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, but biohacking is simply a concept for self-improvement. There are a number of ways you can start to incorporate methods of biohacking into your daily routine. We'll discuss some of those ideas here today on our show. Not only will we discuss biohacking, but specifically biohacking in performance enhancement and how cannabinoids and cannabis terpenes can be used. To shed light on this topic, we have Curt Robbins, who's an expert in this field. Curt has a variety of roles in the cannabis industry. Curt develops applications for permits and licenses. He writes business plans, operational plans. He puts together standard operating procedures, works on inventory control plans, security plans, etc., etc., etc. Robbins completed more than 130 cannabis license applications to date. His work primarily has been done in California. At the municipal level, he developed applications in Linwood, Costa Mesa, Eureka, and Santa Ana. At the state level, he's also worked on teams for licenses in Illinois, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, California. These have been in a variety of areas such as manufacturing, processing, cultivation, distribution, retail. Curt has contributed over 500 articles in science, business, and medical uses and aspects of cannabis in magazines and media outlets such as High Times, CannaBiz Journal, Mary Jane, MassRoots, Cannabis Culture, Whaxy. The list goes on and on. He tweets regularly from @RobbinsGroup LLC on Twitter. Today, Curt will break down what biohacking is. He'll review cannabinoids, terpenes, various terpene profiles and types, and what and how they can be used. We'll get into business strategy, politics, medical cannabis, and the endocannabinoid system. We'll also discuss the body's natural version of THC called anandamide. So, let's get started. Hello, Curt.
Hey, Brian. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Yeah, we got a few thoughts between us.
Before we dive into our topic today, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? Who's Curt Robbins? And I'll also ask, who's Gooey Rubinski?
Well, when I got into the cannabis culture, because there really was no industry. Even today, it's kind of a pocketed joke. So I'll just say the culture. Back in 2003 timeframe. And as a writer, I wanted to learn more. And I guess it's just a natural expression of me to, if there's something I want to go mad scientist on, I write about it. And so I started pitching articles in magazines like High Times and Cannabis Culture and Skunk magazine, and I had probably written for more magazines than I can remember. Most of them are out of business at this point, more out of business than in business that I've written for, I think. And it worked. So I got, you're forced to learn about the chemistry of cannabis and the business of cannabis and the culture and the traditions and the history. And especially when North American consumers learn about how Prohibition came about and kind of how the democratic system was thwarted for a brief moment that turned into basically almost a century of the war on drugs.
Yeah, when you say those magazines are out of business, were they consolidated and bought up, or they just shut down?
So it's a really tough business to make it in. One of my favorites was Heads out of Canada. They were even featured in the original Trailer Park Boys movie. And I had a good thing going with them. Their publisher was a cool dude, and we were really enjoying. And just on the money side, you just got to constantly keep advertisers coming in the door. I mean, it's a very difficult business, especially with all the social media.
Yeah, definitely can relate with Heady and Jay diving into the media space in the last year or two. Plus, in cannabis right now, there's not necessarily a lot of money. I mean, there is a ton of money, but there's not a lot of money here in New Jersey right now because the industry is still just coming into play. Not a lot of heavy spending on advertising yet.
Right.
In small ways they are, but not necessarily on a large scale.
got to get your legal market first. And it just doesn't, that's one of the things that I've talked about on other podcasts is none of this happens overnight. And what we like to think takes months really takes years. But it's nice to see the cannabis industry, again, what the heck is that even? But when we look at the heat maps now, especially after the latest election, the nation is starting to balance out. We've got Michigan, we've got stuff going on the East Coast there. We know New Jersey and New York are right around the corner, and especially New York brings us a lot of population, right? We got all this West Coast population in the cannabis industry right now with California, especially with 40 million residents. But it'd be nice to see more of those population centers. It'd be nice to get Florida online at 20 million down there, one of the most populous states. We've also got some conservative folks in those regions where they might, they're not so cannabis friendly, and they hold a lot of the stigma of what we were just talking about, 80 years of prohibition. And unfortunately, they believe a lot of that. They believe that, there's a legal dispensary down on the corner, that the neighbor kids are going to be worthless stoners who get poor grades and don't contribute to society. It's unfortunate, but those perceptions are everywhere.
They're definitely here in New Jersey. We have a lot of reefer madness running rampant. At a seminar or a media panel about 2 weeks ago, and there were people there convinced that cannabis would be on every corner, like you said, in marijuana trucks. He said it would be just like the crack epidemic. So there's a lot to overcome.
Marijuana trucks. What does that even mean? And the kids. I have kids, okay? And I'm so glad I do, so I'm not a hypocrite when I talk about this. I mean, we've all seen the effects of, we could talk for hours, which kids are everybody's got a drug of choice. We can be all Disney-esque, refined religious. We can do all that as much as we want. Everybody's got a drug of choice, and if they don't, they probably should, right? Modern life says you might want to have a drug of choice. What do you want your kids doing, people? Mr. and Mrs. America, what do you want your kids doing? Alcohol? Opioids? Oh, maybe crack or heroin, maybe a little meth. Or how about smoking a joint? Personally, I made sure that when my kids got to the right age, that they knew what their options were and they knew why they should choose certain options.
I agree 100%. I mean, that's a lot of what Hetty and Jay is trying to do, is educate the masses, educate the people who may be looking for answers. And we're trying to give, I always say, a balanced view. Of course, we're pro-cannabis, but we're trying to give it in a realistic fashion, not using scare tactics to get the people.
It should be science-based.
Yes, science-based.
It's what I like about the legal market that's emerging in California, because they have such a massive population base here, the sixth largest GDP in the world, okay, up against China, Russia, Germany, UK. And it's just, it's amazing what the 40 million residents of California do if you look at the economics of the whole thing and the metrics. So we've got some brands emerging, and we're seeing craft brands, right? High price, $70 ace in beautiful collector. I like that the market is beginning to segment, right? It's catering to a craft high end.
Right.
Now I indulge in that craft high end. I go direct to the farmer. I break the system in some respects. I'm hacking the system. It's so ironic because I'm helping people get licensed and write their business plans and such and play by the legal system. But there's still some, obviously we could talk at length about the problems in that legal system. But anyway, so we've got California coming online with all this money and all this population and all these really innovative brands. And so I think you're going to see what you want, Brian. The problem is right now, legally, let's say New Jersey goes legal tomorrow. Legally, we got no interstate commerce. It doesn't matter what New Jersey wants. It doesn't matter what California wants, those jurisdictions. It's Washington, D.C. with Schedule I holding up interstate commerce. So in theory, every single state in the United States could say, hey, we're embracing adult use cannabis. It's legal. We can do it all. But if they can't trade across borders, then if you're in a state like Colorado, hey, one of the earliest adopters, right? Good old Colorado. We love Colorado in the cannabis industry. Well, only 5.5 million residents of that state. If there's no interstate commerce, how big is that market? 5.5 million residents, right? Only a certain percentage of whom consume cannabis. So we really, the trick here, and all the smart kids on the playground I've been talking to since I got to LA a year and a half ago and just been going mad scientists on this, are saying, everybody thinks the green rush, right? Everything's crazy right now. And it is. My phone's ringing off the hook. I can't keep up with the opportunity right now for what I do. The real opportunity does not emerge until we get interstate commerce somehow, some way. But right now, when you have California cannot exchange products, cannot exchange goods with New Jersey, with Ohio, with Florida, all other industries can do that.
Yeah, America is supposed to be all about the free market, and that's definitely not the free market system.
There you go.
There's talk about the federal government moving into some sort of federal regulation now. I'm thinking it's going to be a states' rights issue. We'll see if that's what they do. I mean, right now I know Jeff Sessions was recently released from the cabinet, the Attorney General, for those of you who may not know. But first of all, who will be the replacement? Secondly, will they allow Trump, or will Trump, be able to do what he wants to do? But I've been hearing the federal government may move towards a relaxed stance across the country, and hopefully that will allow interstate commerce. But again, if you have states who are cracking down in the transportation, so there would have to be some federal regulation on that piece as well, allowing, the states who are illegal to allow it to be transported through.
Yeah. And there's the two sides of this, right? There's the legitimate side. As a technical writer, I like to think of theory and practice. There's the theoretical realm, and then there's the real realm. What happens in the real world? In the real world, well, in the theoretical zone, okay, so California can't trade with New Jersey, can't trade with Florida or Ohio. That kind of sucks. Wow, that's going to put a damper on things economically, right? That's really going to have a dramatic effect on everything that's going on. So what these people are doing is, a third or maybe 2/3 of their product is legit and goes through legitimate legal channels, and a certain percentage of their product goes through the black market, and it gets shipped east, and it goes to Cleveland, or it goes to Tallahassee or Memphis, because, wow, you can buy top shelf herb back there for $450 an ounce. So the profit margin incentive for the folks here in the legal states like California or Colorado or Oregon is immense. And that's quite honestly what a lot of them are doing. They're good people, but it's not cheap to launch a legal business, especially with all the regulatory oversight. That's where people like me come in. I make my living doing that. So it costs money for a business to do that. A lot of them are funding the legal business with the black market business. But good for them, because they're trying to go legal, right? And if that's their end goal, to get there and pay their taxes and be part of the system, then that's a good thing. But that's the real dynamic of what's going on. I see it every day. Biohacking.
First, Curt, why don't you talk about terpenes in general? What are terpenes for the listeners who may not know? And how are they different from cannabinoids?
So terpenes and cannabinoids, as like an instructional designer, let's take this complication of hundreds and hundreds of chemicals and all of these cellular receptors within the human body. And wow, it can get, this is chemistry. This gets really damn complicated. There's a reason most of us didn't like that class in high school, right? It tested our brain. So let's make it real simple. Let's say there are 3 different categories of chemicals within the cannabis herb, which is also categorized as a vegetable, by the way. They're cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. Flavonoids, as you might guess, convey flavor. They're flavor molecules. Let's just keep it real simple. The terpenes are aromatic molecules. They're for aroma. And the cannabinoids, well, gosh, what do the cannabinoids do? Well, the most famous cannabinoid is THC, and THC has what's called a binding affinity at the molecular level with some special receptors in the human body that are collected, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are in the brain and central nervous system. And the fact that we just said they're in the brain means that this cannabinoid and many other cannabinoids and terpenes have a special quality about them. And that special quality is they can cross the blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier in human beings is extremely selective. It's because, you start messing with the brain and you've killed the creature, right? Only we're finding it gets more complex than that, but sometimes there are some of these molecules, like terpenes and cannabinoids, that don't actually themselves go into the cellular receptor and bind, but they're more like traffic cops, and they allow other molecules to pass. They're kind of like a crossing guard for a school, right? They're making sure all the students get across the street, but they don't themselves cross the street.
Wow.
So it really starts to get complicated. Okay, so back to our 3 categories. So we've got the terpenes, cannabinoids, and flavonoids. We're not going to talk about the flavonoids today. I am going to address them in some future articles because nobody talks about flavonoids, right? So again, I don't know much about it.
That was a little bit of education right there.
But they're there. Well, it gets complicated because even terpenes convey flavor. Well, wait a second. We just said terpenes are aroma. Well, there's some flavor there too if they get on your tongue. One of the challenges for this at an instructional design level is how do we convey the basic information without bastardizing it to the point where we're not in touch with reality. We're no longer hard, tight on our science, right? And at the same time, we have to keep it simple, or consumers are just going to say, nah, this is too complicated, right? Okay, so back to,
Right.
we're not going to talk about flavonoids right now, but we see them there in our pyramid. And we got the terpenes and the cannabinoids. Now, the cannabinoids, we first started discovering this stuff in the 1960s in Israel. And about 1964, we discover cannabinoids and the system that the cannabinoids from, well, they're called phytocannabinoids because they're derived from a plant. If there are similar cousin molecules that are manufactured by the human body, and they're called endocannabinoids. So phytocannabinoids, endocannabinoids, it just means plant-based or human-based. It's real simple. It sounds like Latin. Well, it is. But so, again, we're trying to take 16 hours worth of classroom knowledge here and cram it into 10 minutes. So the most famous endocannabinoid is anandamide. And there's another one called 2-AG. And we know very little about these systems because of Schedule 1 in D.C., right? The federal government in the United States, whether we like it or not, but to take the politics out of it for a second, research has been thwarted. Research has just not occurred that should. We're a research-heavy country in all respects, military, consumer goods, all aspects of science. So we're doing almost nothing in terms of cannabis research. But anyway, we do know a little, and there are a lot of countries other than the United States that have done research on this, and miraculously, research has also come out of the U.S. So we got these cannabinoids and we got these terpenes, and they go into the human.
When people talk about terpenes or terpene profiles, are they the same thing or are they different?
Good question. A terpene, so there's 200 different types of terpenes. So one's called myrcene. It's the most popular. It's the most common as volume by weight within a cannabis strain. There's all these different strains out there, right? Thousands and thousands of them. So when we talk about cannabis, quote unquote, what are we even talking about, right? It really gets kind of interesting. So anyway, so we've got these terpenes, we've got these cannabinoids, and they go into the human body through the system called the ECS, the endocannabinoid system. We know we have these endocannabinoids that the human body manufactures, anandamide and 2-AG. They're pretty much the two ones that all the literature cites. Well, it turns out that THC, the phytocannabinoid from cannabis, in many respects mimics anandamide in the human body when it interacts with the endocannabinoid system. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The endocannabinoid system is not a human system, it's a mammalian system. So it's in every single mammal on the face of the earth. Cat, dogs. So now we're noticing an industry segment is emerging that is CBD and other cannabis-derived products, health products, wellness products for dogs and cats. Because, it's already $1 trillion industry. Americans love their dogs and cats, right? I live in Los Angeles. We treat them like children here. In fact, people here in LA treat their dogs better than I think I treated my children. I almost feel guilty.
I know. We treat our little dog like a princess. I know what you mean.
So what it's really kind of cool, the endocannabinoid system, not just humans. But anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So we pull in the cannabinoids from a plant. There's a theory of endocannabinoid deficiency, that modern life, stress, not enough exercise, poor diet, got your crappy 1-hour commute, rush hour traffic every day, whatever, it makes us unhealthy, right? We get a deficiency in our endocannabinoid system. So just like vitamin supplementation, if you're not getting enough anandamide, one thing we've learned is that you produce anandamide during endurance exercise. So if you're just sitting in front of a computer all day long, you're getting no exercise, you're not producing the anandamide. Might getting phytocannabinoids like THC and CBD benefit that endocannabinoid system? Yes, it does. That's something that is undisputed. So we're supplementing a deficient system. In theory, if your endocannabinoid system was not deficient, you wouldn't need the cannabinoids and terpenes from a plant like cannabis.
So how can we get those into our body? Besides, the typical smoking cannabis.
Well, here's what I've noticed. I was in the cannabis culture, we hide tobacco smoking, right, to a large extent because it's kind of this pariah. But I was smoking about half a pack of cigarettes a day for the last 5 years. And a few months ago, I quit.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I've made multiple attempts to quit over that 5-year period, and obviously unsuccessfully until the last. So what changed on the last attempt, where I actually just the other night I was socializing with someone here in West Hollywood, and she's a light smoker, and she's sitting right beside me, puffing away. Didn't really bother me, honestly. So like, how does this happen? So I think it's a combination, and I'm working with some nutritionists and health experts who have much more knowledge in these areas than I do. And we're going to collaborate on some projects to try to bring some light to this. So why was I so successful in ceasing tobacco smoking? Something that, if we could take what I did, my experience and my success in that, and put it into a pill and sell it, everybody who was smoking cigarettes would want to buy
Definitely.
it, right?
Quick fix. That's what we want, right?
Yeah. Well, and in a way, there is no quick fix. It's a combination, back to your question, how can we improve human health, human wellness, our quality of lifestyle, right, with this cannabis plant, with hemp and cannabis? And I believe that it is a combination of regular exercise, getting phytocannabinoids from plants like cannabis. And just to be fair, it's not necessarily cannabis, right? Let's go back to our terpenes and our cannabinoids. I think this is important for listeners to get a truly big picture idea, because there's a few more pieces of this puzzle that we haven't discussed. So the terpenes in cannabis, there's about 200 of them that have been identified. But in nature, there are 20,000 terpenes. And it turns out that one of the most popular major terpenes in cannabis is pinene. Well, as its name implies, pine. Gosh, where else do you think we find that in nature? We find it in a pine forest, right? Pine trees, sycamore tree, we have all these different varieties, and they manufacture. So it's the basic idea that molecule is not the monopoly of cannabis. It's created by all these other plants in nature too. So if we're going to sit here and say, wow, pinene is a good chemical because it's anti-cancer, it's anti-systemic inflammation, it helps people it's an analgesic, meaning it kills pain. Those are the three major efficacies of terpenes that we find. So we have to fairly say, well, like humulene, why some strains of cannabis smell like beers? Because they share a common terpene, and it's called humulene, and it's the hoppy smell, that earthy, musky, hoppy. That's a terpene, aromatic terpene called humulene.
Can you quickly give us an example of maybe a strain or two that's popular with pinene, and then a strain that would be popular with humulene?
Well, again, okay, so let's go back. Yes and no. We could give some straight up answers for that. So the most common terpene of those 200 found in cannabis is myrcene. And myrcene, it is believed by certain organizations and experts in the industry, like Steep Hill Labs in Berkeley, California, that if a particular strain of cannabis has more than 0.5% myrcene has a sedative effect. So it's responsible for that stereotypical response to cannabis where you get couch lock and you can barely reach for the remote to, change the TV, right? It's largely part. Now, there are other terpenes and cannabinoids that have a sedative effect, for the record. And if you get a strain that happens to have a lot of them in it, right, it starts stacking up those sedative molecules. Yeah, you'll get bedtime for bonzo, for sure. Now, that's what we want for some patients, right? Some patients they suffer insomnia because they have pain, all these other issues. So this really becomes, back to your original question, Brian, how can we improve human health and wellness with these cannabinoids and terpenes in cannabis? Part of the game we're playing is matching the appropriate, you said terpene and terpene profile, okay? Terpenes are individual molecules. The terpene profile is for a particular strain or cultivar of cannabis, and it is all of the terpenes in that particular strain and their relative percentages to one another or to the overall plant.
Makes perfect sense now. Much clearer to me now.
And you have a cannabinoid profile too. And the cannabinoid profile is the same thing. Okay. It's like looking at the bullet list on the brochure for the car in the showroom, right? Does it have air conditioning? Does it have a sunroof? What are the characteristics of this? How many different terpenes are in this? Of course, this all comes down to testing also. Do they have liquid chromatography, gas chromatography? What technology is this lab using to analyze this cannabis? Are their technicians qualified? Yada, yada, right? It gets complicated.
So what about biohacking? I mean, what is it? Is it just dieting, taking vitamins, exercising? Is it more than that? Terpenes, how does all this play into biohacking?
Yeah, for me personally, it comes down to performance enhancement. And when I first started drinking coffee in college, I basically just never drank coffee until I was a sophomore, junior in college. And I just instantly loved it and became just drink coffee all day long and have been ever since. I basically did that because the caffeine was performance enhancement for me. It let me type faster. It let me type longer, right? Let me do my job in life, tapping away at the keyboard. And I like that. So we have this weird, the criticism in the United States that, okay, sugar, 1 year sugar is good for you, the next it kills you. Gosh, what's going on here? Eggs, are eggs good for you? We just kind of put this blind faith in major media outlets. I think Time Magazine is a bunch of writers and editors and marketers. I'm not sure they've got doctors on staff. Maybe they do, or hopefully they interview them. But we have to be really careful where we take our direction. So overall wellness. Let's say cannabis is part of that. We get these terpenes and cannabinoids into our bodies. They get into the endocannabinoid system, and they help us achieve what's called homeostasis or balance. That's just a fancy way of saying balance. So if we have a deficiency, we eradicate that deficiency. Now we do not have that deficiency. It's the theory that a lot of the diseases that we know are related to the ECS, arthritis, cancer, Crohn's disease, fibromyalgia, I could go on and on and on, are a lot of medical experts, folks with MDs and PhDs and a lot of intelligence behind them are saying it's simply, we all have different genetic makeups, right? Our bodies are all different. So if you suffer a deficiency in your ECS, maybe it results in you having epilepsy. But if I have a significant deficiency in my ECS, maybe it results in me having Crohn's disease or severe depression or something else. So, how do we deal with that to become healthier humans? Part of it, I think, is regular exercise. That has nothing to do with cannabis, right? We just got to get our lazy asses off the sofa and get out and do something. And it's one reason I'm blessed to be here in Southern California, because it's, there's so many beautiful places I can go. I'm into cycling, so I can jump on my bicycle and, 20 minutes later, I'm at a beautiful vista overlooking a valley or something. I'm blessed in that respect, right? That's not the case for everybody, but get yourself in your overall life to a place where you can exercise on a regular basis. Because, if there's a foot of snow outside and you're a runner and you're like, I can't go out and run in a foot of snow, this is not working. I'm not saying it's easy, but go move someplace where there's not a foot of snow and you can engage in a healthy lifestyle. Or join a gym or something, get a treadmill. You got to get that regular exercise. I'm kind of promoting it on social media with a hashtag campaign called Chasing Anandamide, where if you produce enough of your anandamide internally, you've just improved your endocannabinoid system. Okay, let's also go get some THC and CBD and a bunch of terpenes from cannabis, and let's supplement our endocannabinoid system that way also. Okay, so now we've done two good things. What else? Diet. If you're putting in the computer world, I was in the .com for a couple decades, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So if you're putting total garbage into your body every single day, you're probably not going to be the healthiest guy on the block. So you got diet, you got regular exercise, and you don't have to go out and run 40 miles 4 times a week. It really doesn't. I think the average American doesn't realize that if you exercise only 20 minutes 3 times a week, this is not a whole lot, folks. Okay, 20 minutes 3 times a week, and you raise your pulse by a certain percentage. I forget exactly what it is. It gives you like 90% of the health benefits of someone who goes out and runs a marathon every weekend.
I know a little bit of exercise goes a long way.
Yeah.
They say like you said, 20 minutes a day, a few days a week is definitely better than nothing. That's for sure.
But I don't think anybody should think, Brian, that, here's a pre-roll. Smoke 2 of these every day, and your cancer goes away, and your depression goes away, and your anxiety goes away, and suddenly you're a healthier, happier, more successful person. That's part of the equation. For the record, that there is a fourth ingredient. Back to biohacking and my success in ceasing tobacco. And that fourth ingredient could go under quite a few labels, but a lot of times more spiritual cannabis consumers will cite this idea of use with intent. And I think I changed the reasons I was using cannabis. We got to think, are you just trying to escape? Are you an escape artist? You just want to forget about your problems and not deal with them? Because, we're certainly good at that, especially those among us who drink a lot. Or, what are you trying to achieve when you consume cannabis? When you do anything, you go out and run 5 miles. What are you trying to achieve there? Right? So it just kind of tuned my mind to thinking before any activity, before I rode my bike to Malibu, or, before I smoked a joint, before eating a cookie that was medicated, before bed, why am I doing this? I know I'm waxing philosophical at this point. This is not very scientific. And I think that's the difference, quite frankly, that I was able to, why was I unsuccessful all these other times? And this time it just it worked so well. I'm still amazed by it
What
myself.
do you mean the using cannabis for enhancement?
Ceasing tobacco smoking. Well, and the reason I'm kind of going back to that ceasing, if we're talking about biohacking and performance enhancement, it didn't take a lot of rocket science for me to look at my life and to say, well, the cigarette smoking needs to go. I determined two things over the summer. I needed to stop smoking a half pack of cigarettes a day, and I needed to start exercising on a regular basis. That those two simple things needed to occur in my life for me to reach my personal goals and quote unquote be successful. And so I was like, okay, then I got to do that. There's just no rocket science there. And I think it was just, the attitude part. Some people meditate, some people do yoga. However you do it, get your head into a place, because if your attitude and your psyche is not in the right place, you're going to break down at the next party you go to after 2 drinks and someone offers you a Parliament, you're going to be smoking again. You didn't biohack it the right way, right?
When I medicate prior to exercise, I feel at least I get a much better performance. I don't know if it's that I forget, that I'm pushing my body so hard in a weird way, or just it gets me charged up. I'm sure that the different strains, profiles would have some play into that, but it just feels like it allows me to tap into some endurance I wouldn't otherwise have. I don't know if there's some science there or if it's just my stone mind, but based on what you're saying, I would think there must be something going on. What do you think?
I think what we're doing is we're mitigating anxiety and distraction when we do that, because exercise, especially intense endurance exercise, takes focus, right? If I'm going to go out and ride my bike 90 miles, that's going to take just a little bit of focus. I'm not Lance Armstrong. So, and if you've got just, modern life is, okay, your career and your job and your relationships and possibly your spouse or your children or your aging parents, or, there's all these distractions. And it's funny because with social media and the radio in our car or whatever, we allow ourselves to be even more distracted, right? Even more shit to come in and start eating away at our psyche. If consuming cannabis before endurance exercise can help you focus on said endurance exercise, I think that's the mechanism.
Definitely.
Right there.
I knew there was something to it.
I
feel like, I always think I feel like it allows me to push myself harder, go further. I'm not doing 90 miles, but even if I'm out doing a 5K run or walk, I just feel that it lets me put the distractions besides and really focus and gets me into that zone. And that's what it takes from me. And I feel like it uplifts me as well. Kind of like, in the morning, you might want to have coffee, have the morning joint or dab or bowl, whatever it is you ingest it with. But I just feel like to some people, they might think, doesn't that make you distracted or unfocused? But quite the contrary, to so many people, it does focus them. It gets them in that zone, whether it's in an academic or work type of thing, or in what we're talking about, exercise, performance.
Yeah, regardless of said activity, if you can focus, if we as humans can focus on that activity, I used to consult for this company in Texas, and in the conference rooms, they'd have these big posters that said, "Be here now," right? Certainly they didn't invent that, but the concept of be here now, and it's not easy, right? I mean, we all get distracted at some point where the shit piles up and we're like, oh God, the mortgage is due and the kids are, it happens. It's modern life. But that's why I think these are lifestyle changes. And I know it's like, Curt, we didn't, bring you on our podcast to talk about, being a lifestyle coach. I just want to really stress that, let's talk about the chemistry of terpenes and cannabinoids and the ECS and supplementation and phytocannabinoids, all this great stuff. But we got to, in the end, realize that you're not going to just turn your life around and prove. I mean, what are we talking about with legalization? Why are we trying to convince society to embrace hemp and cannabis? We're saying it's good for society. It's good for individuals. It's good at the molecular level for the health of children and adults and everyone, right? It's good for the economy. We're selling it on a lot of these, a lot of these ways here. I think we need to couch that in the context of this is just one tool in your toolbox to improve your physical, psychological, and spiritual
It's
well-being.
Like so many other things. I mean, you could, read any self-help books or, listen to an audio training seminar or something like that. But if you're not applying what you're doing and you're not reviewing it and you're not supplementing your life in other areas, it's not going to work to its fullest extent, at least. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. The THC, and the ECS products, the terpenes themselves will do a lot, but you need to do more to make those things have their fullest effect.
Yeah, it's just, again, I'm not trying to sound like a life coach, but I think in our lives, we can manifest certain visions within reason, right? I can't say, I don't, if my plan involves going out and buying 12 Lamborghinis tomorrow, guess what? I'm not buying 12 Lamborghinis tomorrow. Okay. But we all have a certain amount of a capability to deal with these things. And I think, it's like dieting, right? If you just diet for 3 months and then you're right back to your old shitty, consumption levels and what you're putting in your body, then that's obviously not a good thing. It was good for 3 months, maybe, but 8 to 18 months later, what are you getting? What benefit? So really the trick here, back to the idea of biohacking, is let's put biohacking in the context of why the heck are we even talking about this topic? And I think we always need to put it in the framework of it's got to be sustainable. It's the same thing I tell clients in business trying to get into the cannabis industry. Sometimes these people are extremely creative and they have a lot of passion, but sometimes they're trying to create business models that are not necessarily sustainable. So we really focus on the concept of sustainability. It's critical, right? So if you biohack your life, in terms of the molecules that you're putting in your body or not putting into your body. Like I purposely, it's a little controversial, but I put a lot of caffeine molecules in my body. It works for me. It doesn't, that's another thing. It doesn't mean it works for everybody. Not everybody gets up and smokes a joint, has a cup of coffee and says, let's go write 2,000 words. That's not what everybody does. And that's not necessarily the healthiest thing for everybody. But if you can weave it in, if you're, okay, I can go to the gym at 8 a.m. every Saturday. That's something I can actually do, even though it's northern Michigan and it's February and it's a little cold outside, but you can still pull that off. But it's when we start blowing it off and saying, life's too busy and the kids and school and work and, I just don't have time to do that stuff anymore. We get out of balance. And then suddenly we're sick and we see people around us all the time, right? One of the things I noticed about Southern California since moving here is people do seem a little happier here than when I was living in the Midwest. Now, that's just a total perception on my part. There's no science or metrics behind that. But my theory behind it is that these people spend a great deal of time outside, right? Mm-hmm. Some of these restaurants here, 60% of their seating is at the outside cafe. Why? Because they can do that 360 days
it's like more sun, like I said earlier, the little biohack.
Exactly.
Go outside, get more sun.
Changes.
It might improve your mood. It might improve your health. But that's a slight little thing. And people say all the time, people I know will say, hey, I want to move out to Arizona because I'll be happier there because it's sunny and dry.
Do it. You know what, people, everything happens. I won't get philosophical here, but the weather here is so amazing and I just love doing my cycling thing. There is a part of me that's like, damn, why didn't I move to Southern California like 15, 20 years ago?
Oh, you're making me jealous.
I just, So I encourage your listeners, do it. If Scottsdale, Arizona is calling and you just want to, you want to go play in Scottsdale, get your ass to Scottsdale. Life is short.
So as far as the biohacking with cannabis, and is this something you see as the next big thing in cannabis, performance enhancement?
I wouldn't call it the next big thing. Again, much of America, we were just talking about perceptions under the drug war and prohibition. And there's people, I remember growing up, the government and thought leaders were saying, marijuana rotted your brain cells. I started smoking weed when I was 14 years old, and I remember being a teenager, and I wasn't a chronic smoker. It was just, a couple times a year if one of my buddies had it or something. I just didn't hang in those circles. And so when I'm sitting there, smoking cannabis with my teenage buddies, if I were to believe the government, it was killing brain cells. Of course, they'd say, drink a beer and killing brain cells. Wow, we're killing brain cells all day long. We're becoming idiots every single hour. It was kind of the perception that we were given. So there's still people walking around today. Some of them are CEOs, some of them are politicians or senators or just your neighbor in the church choir or whatever, But they believe, yeah, you smoke a joint, you kill a bunch of brain cells, you become a stupid stoner. That stupid stoner, reefer madness perception. If you can't get beyond that perception of cannabis, then you're probably not going to listen to someone like me talk about terpenes and cannabinoids and how they help me type faster or ride my bike.
Are there already supplements on the market, to do this? I mean, of course, I already see protein powders, hemp oils, the CBD products. Do you feel like there's a niche already carved out in the marketing world for the supplement stores or the health food stores for performance enhancement and or recovery from performance?
Yeah, I think we are going to see more of that. Right now, America is still like, what's CBD? What's CBD again? Here, let me text my nephew. He'll tell me.
But as that's happening, I think that you're going to see, the NFL and the NBA and, if not the organizations themselves, there's definitely players who were part of and are part of currently who are getting behind some of these endeavors and products for a variety of reasons, and whether they believe in it or they think it's, the next big thing and a cash cow, the green rush. But regardless, as that all happens and this continues to come into the mainstream, I just feel the marketing will become more structured and focused in that area.
I think you're right, Brian, that savvy companies are going to realize exactly what we've been talking about here, that there is real performance enhancement, especially in professional team sports where it's competitive as heck. We just got done with the World Series in baseball, and that got right down to the line, right? Talk about competitive, right? If you just have a slight edge over the other team, take all the politics out of it, but if you just have a slight performance edge, wow, that can be the difference between winning it and not winning it. So I think this is a big deal. But then again, I've seen what it's done for me personally. I've had the combination of adding endurance exercise to my life and removing cigarette smoking. I've seen performance that even when I was 20 years younger, I could not have done what I'm doing today. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I'm mind blown, but why is this? And again, it's this combination. It's not just having a steady supply of cannabis, but if we want to, we are talking about cannabis here, right? So yeah, let's talk about that for a second. When I lived in Ohio, when I lived in Texas, when I lived in Virginia, I did not cultivate cannabis personally. So finding a steady supply of good, organic, healthy cannabis medicine was challenging to say the least. You live in New Jersey, you know what I'm talking about. Now that I live in California, and I have for 2.5 years, I have had a steady supply I make sure it's organic cannabis. And I'm seeing all these improvements in my body, and it's not just physically, it's mentally, psychologically and emotionally or /spiritually also that I've seen benefits. Gosh, does that have anything to do with me having, I'll be honest, an unlimited supply of organic cannabis?
I think it's just the sun. It's just the sun.
I'm, with supplementation of an ECS, because that's, okay, back to anandamide. One thing we've noticed about anandamide is it has a fairly short lifespan within the human body. So when you go out and do this endurance exercise, that's why you got to do it on a regular basis, because you're going to manufacture some anandamide, you're going to benefit from it. Yay, it's sometimes called the bliss molecule for lots of good reasons, but then it's going to be out of your body and you're going to have to make more anandamide.
As you're saying all this stuff and, we're talking, I'm thinking about, Michael Phelps and his experience, with taking bong hits or whatever he was doing. And there's a meme that goes around like, think only losers use cannabis, and then he's got all the gold medals on and stuff.
And, in all fairness, it's not necessarily taking bong hits, right? There's some of my mentors within medical research here in the States would roll their eyes at the Michael Phelps, doing the bong hits kind of thing. It's like, that's not performance.
I just said it because it's
no.
The way it was, portrayed.
No, it's a great example. I'm glad you brought it up because it's one that most of your listeners can relate to, right? And it's, there's lots of topics we don't have time to talk about here in terms of like titration, dosing, okay? What is the right dose? And we notice with like CBD, here's something, one of the most common questions I get from lay people is, okay, I was shopping for a CBD product and there's CBD only products and then there's CBD plus THC and then they have ratios and they've got like a 1-to-1 and a 3-to-1 and a 20-to-1. And what does this mean, Curt? And yeah, that's where we've got to educate. I mean, basically quite honestly, it's why people are hiring me right now for content marketing, because they realize that they have this tremendous opportunity to jump into the green rush and to successfully market hemp and cannabis products in a variety of ways, but you have a consumer population that doesn't bloody understand your product or your service. They don't really understand what cannabis is. What's a strain? I mean, if you're a potential consumer, the person you're trying to resonate with and get to buy your product or service says, I want to walk into a Mercedes dealership, but what's a steering wheel? Am I a qualified customer of that dealership? So this is the challenge that we all face. Again, it's why I'm doing content marketing and not so much freelance writing anymore, because content marketing is a very different model. It's not advertiser-based, right? It's a company saying, we're launching into the cannabis space and we would like to tell the world via our social media, et cetera, about what it is we do. And it's kind of a more refined 21st century way of talking about your products and services without screaming 50% discount, Sunday, the 1950s used car model. I would hope that if we're building this new industry, this kind of reinvented culture called cannabis, that we would engage in more refined marketing and sales, and that it would involve a lot of education and edutainment. Right? Edutainment. That's what we all need to be thinking. If you're launching a cannabis business, you need to be thinking content marketing and edutainment. But, nobody's going to jump into your product or service. You're not going to win the hearts and minds of Mr. and Mrs. America if they don't know. You got a terpene company. What the hell's a terpene? Well, you got a big challenge there. You better educate these folks about what the heck a terpene is in the first place.
Definitely.
Right?
So when you talk about content marketing, if listeners wanted to reach out to you, find out more about Curt Robbins, where can they find you? Where can they see some of your latest work? Any projects you're working on you'd like to highlight?
Well, there is a catalog of more than 500 articles out there that I wrote under the pen name Gooey Rubinski. I don't write under the pen name anymore. All content for the past couple months and going forward will come out under my name, Curt Robbins. And there's stuff out there, quite honestly, that has been out there a few years. Hopefully it's good, solid content, I would like to think. But there's new research emerging all of the time, new trends. So I've got a lot of projects planned. I'm going to be dropping content in different areas with different partners. And I want to get into more audio, too, because I think it just works. We're seeing a resurgence of podcasting. Especially with the help of social media, and it's a beautiful thing. I've loved dicking around with audio since I was a little kid, and my grandparents gave me a Panasonic tape recorder for Christmas. We can do a lot. Audio works for the busy, active lifestyles of modern Americans, where we can listen during our work commute, or when we're running, or when I listen to them when I'm cycling. So it's really flexible in that respect. I would encourage your listeners who are trying to get into the cannabis industry to, don't forget about audio. You want to get a lot of text articles and text narrative type content out there that promotes your products and services. And audio is a lot easier to produce than video. So it's almost like a cheat, right? You want to get into multimedia and go beyond text, but you don't really have the resources, time, money, and effort to get into good. Because if you're going to do video, you want to do it right. You don't want to put out a piece of junk. I would recommend that people jump into audio. It can be a very efficient way of going beyond.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can get started in the audio. I mean, like Gary Vaynerchuk, he talks about just take out your phone and hit record. I mean, it is as simple as that on the one hand. But then again,
sometimes
you want to market it, you want to get it on the right platforms. So there are a lot of pieces to make it professional, high-end quality. But it is such an easy thing to do, and it's so easy to consume from the consumer end. So how could someone wanting to break into the cannabis space get started in this niche subset of performance enhancement via cannabinoids and or terpenes?
It's tricky. Do you want to be a business that touches the plant, so to speak, like a cultivator or a processor, an extraction artist? Or are you someone like me who doesn't touch the plant? Let's say you've been an attorney for 20 years and you're like, wow, I'm really interested in this green rush stuff for a variety of reasons. I want to now apply my attorney skills, my JD, to the cannabis industry. There's a lot of people doing that, whether they're attorneys or CPAs or architects or doctors or technical writers like me. They're just taking what they've done for decades and pointing their laser at the cannabis industry. But I talk to a lot of people who are in their 20s and 30s, and they're coming up and just saying, they're looking at their parents' generation, sitting in a cubicle in corporate America and doing their 40 hours a week. And a lot of the millennials also are just not real interested in that. They would like a little more freedom, a little more kind of a metro independent lifestyle. It's kind of like I do, going to the coffee shop with your MacBook under your arm and getting things done.
An anandamide. Can you just, again, what is an anandamide? Is it something that can be isolated and has been isolated out of the cannabis plant? Is it something we can purchase in a store, or is it something else? Can you describe to our listeners a little bit more about anandamide?
Anandamide can be isolated. These molecules that we're discussing can either be extracted from existing plants, right? So if we say we want a bunch of myrcene, we want to, and that's called an isolate. We want to isolate that molecule. So we just want a bunch of myrcene. Some of these healthy molecules, when you isolate them like that, actually become a little, not toxic necessarily, but they can become skin irritants, eye irritants, especially with the terpenes. Some of the terpenes are used in like flammable, they're flammable. When they're concentrated. So again, it's this what's going on the molecular side. Anandamide was discovered in the 1960s, and I think the best way for your listeners to think about it is that it's your body's version of THC. And we supplement with cannabinoids and terpenes from, again, plants other than cannabis also to try to get the health benefits.
I'm just a little confused. Is anandamide something that is, it's in the strain or it's in the body?
It's in the body. Your
so
body,
it's not in the
human
cannabis
body
itself.
produces anandamide. So you don't get anandamide rather from cannabis.
Okay.
Your body
in
produces it.
It's part of the ECS, the
Right.
endocannabinoid system.
Exactly. And there's this other one called 2-AG, capital A, capital G. And anandamide and 2-AG are the two major endocannabinoids, where you want as much, within reason, you want as much of those molecules floating around in your body as possible. And we have these theories, again, the ECS deficiency theory, where they get too low, and now you've got some health problems, right? That deficiency can be manifested as a severe disease, like MS or epilepsy, or as some other health issue, whether it's social anxiety or depression or acne, psoriasis, whatever, glaucoma. There's a problem here. The human has not achieved homeostasis. They've got that balance. So when we think about consuming phytocannabinoids, we need to be thinking supplementation.
Right, it's kind of like a vitamin where you're going to take vitamins to help boost your immune system. Now you're going to take cannabinoids and terpenes to boost your endocannabinoid system.
Right. Well, and it's funny that you mentioned the immune system, because we probably should say, to kind of wrap this up with the endocannabinoid system. I know we're trying to teach a whole lot in a short period of time, but the receptors for both the endocannabinoids and the phytocannabinoids within the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, there's two primary types of receptors, CB1 and CB2. The CB1 receptors are in the brain and central nervous system, okay? The CB2 receptors are throughout the tissues and glands and organs of the immune system, and those go from head to tail, right? Those are all over the body. So we find that anyone who wants to trivialize the role of the ECS in the human body, if anything, we're finding that, oh my God, this whole cannabis is illegal thing is coming across really as a big conspiracy theory, because the ECS is tied to, holy crap, I rarely get the common colds, right? I can't remember the last time I had a cold. I'm a pretty healthy person. Is that because I'm producing anandamide more than the average person, and when I'm not producing my own endocannabinoids, I'm supplementing with phytocannabinoids from herbs like cannabis, so it's improving my immune system through those CB2 receptors throughout my body, and now I'm not getting colds anymore. We don't know. This is where we need more research.
That sounds like the $4.20 question.
Well, it's a green rush, so let's turn it into $4,000.
I was going to say $420. Right? So. Thanks so much for taking time out today, Curt. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. We've tried to cover a whole lot of ground here. Obviously, it's deep science with all the history and the politics, and it just gets really, really complicated. But it's going to be an exciting ride. I guess I hear a lot of pessimism sometimes. Things are crazy right now. It is the Wild West, the cannabis industry, and there really isn't cannabis industry. Where's the cannabis industry? Somebody point me at the cannabis industry. I don't see a single industry. It's way messed up right now. But that's kind of what makes it fun, right? Being in the cannabis industry in California is different than doing it in Maine or Massachusetts or Vermont or Ohio. Now there's all these opportunities popping up throughout North America. Obviously, our friends up north in Canada now have federal legalization. So it's a really exciting time for creative, hardworking entrepreneurs who want to take advantage of the green rush, much like happened back in the 90s with the dot-com.
Do you do a lot of traveling with your line of work right now?
Quite honestly, I do not. I get invitations to trade shows and conferences quite frequently, and I just kind of stay here in Los Angeles. One, I love it. Two, I'm really, really busy, right? So I just don't have the time to be doing a whole lot of travel. And most people I want to meet, even the ones who reside in New York and on the East Coast or in the Midwest, they typically eventually come to Southern California, and we get together here. So I didn't plan it this way, but I have done very little traveling since I got here. And the type of work that I do with compliance documentation and content marketing, most of that can be done at a coffee shop or a restaurant with my MacBook and a little Wi-Fi. So I'm like, hey, if I can pull that off without standing in the TSA line and flying to Detroit, well, why not just stay here?
I agree. I was just wondering because I know a lot of people in the business, no, a lot of people in the industry, seem to be traveling all over the place, coast to coast, and these trade shows. But as a writer, it's a little different. You're doing something that's more mobile. You're dealing with content that you can write about from wherever you are, and because so many of our listeners are interested in getting started in the industry, so I just wanted to see what your travel schedule was like.
Sometimes you do need to travel a lot, especially if you're like a founder, when you're trying to promote your brand and maybe you're trying to get investments. Why you handed someone like me $12,000 to write a business plan for you, a 180-page business plan, because why? You want somebody to hand you $2.3 million so you can launch your business, because it's not cheap. A lot of those people do need to be bam, 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 going to these trade shows, going to these conferences, passing out business cards. They must tirelessly work this. And anyone who thinks they don't have to tirelessly work it, that there's just money floating around, it's like, yes, there is a lot, and will be even more money floating around for people who want to work in this industry, but it's also more competitive. We've had a crap economy with mediocre to shit performance for well over a decade, right? Since kind of the 07 to 09 timeframe here in the state. And the fact that there's true economic opportunity via hemp and cannabis, these pocketed industries that we see in these different jurisdictions throughout the United States. That's got a lot of people understandably extremely excited. Well, what we're seeing it's all bell curve. We've got qualified people trying to enter the cannabis industry. That makes sense. And we've got unqualified people trying to enter the cannabis industry. That makes sense too, right? It's a bell curve. There's good and bad there. Some people are kind of freaking out at the bad, especially like on the consulting side. There's consultants like me who are we hear horror stories all the time. People being told things and other things happen. So I would just like to remind listeners that this green rush, right? Think about that phrase, like a gold rush. It's everybody's running in. It's a rush. Okay, got it. Some of those kids running onto the playground for the brownies are going to be good kids, and we're going to want to seek them out and work with them. And they're honest and smart and hardworking, and they're the kind of people we want to hang with and have as clients and vendors and partners and financiers. And then there's going to be a lot of people who are the opposite of that, unfortunately. And that's reality. There's optimism and pessimism, and we got to hold them both at the same time and look at what's really going on here. Anybody who thinks they're just going to jump in and start grabbing dollars, it's, in my opinion, going to actually be the opposite of that. It's going to be hyper competitive. So the smart kid, if you're selling a product or a service, you're going to have a shit ton of competition. And because there's so much competition, boy, if somebody's just 3% better than you in price or brand recognition or social media management or whatever it is, they're going to inch you out and they're going to get that business instead of you. This is this kind of double-edged sword. This is really tremendously exciting economic opportunity for everyone in North America. But it's going to be hyper competitive, and you got to be really damn good at what you do. And if you don't bring your A game, you're going to go home embarrassed in a couple of years, maybe.
And is that where your expertise also lies with what you're doing right now with your consulting? Is it in helping give these brands this competitive edge that you speak about?
Yeah, if somebody hires me to write a business plan for them, okay, that's a very defined deliverable. I'm going to create a business plan, and 90% of the time, the business plan's purpose is to get investment capital. They're looking to be financed. So that's the only reason they're willing to pay someone like me a big chunk of money to write a complex document like that. So on the strategy side of that, so that's just me as a technical writer. But on the strategy side of that, these people know that I've been in the industry for a long time, and I advocate for them. If they're my clients, if they pay me money, then I will go to the end of the earth for them. And so, yes, I want to see them be successful. That's in everyone's best interest. And again, back to the concept of sustainability. I want to see them not only be successful today and maybe 2 years from now, how about 8 or 10 years from now? Let's create something that's really got some sticking power. I'm not a branding expert. I'm not a marketing expert, but I have mentors in those areas. I approach them quite frequently these days, right? I actually schedule sabbatical trips here in the LA area to sit down with sales and marketing experts and to pick their brains about how not only can I personally in my consulting services succeed in the green rush, but my success is really predicated on the success of my clients who are getting in with cultivation and dispensing and distribution distribution and security and transportation and just all these different segments of the cannabis industry. So when I'm picking the brains of these sales and marketing people, it's so I have that knowledge and can then help my clients, right? If they come to me and say, hey, how should we do our logo type of thing? Well, I'm not a graphical designer, but guess what? That's a part of every business launch that you've ever done. You get your business cards, you get your logo, you get your business license, you hire someone like me to write the license application. This is the cost of doing business. And it's not real cheap, quite honestly. If your aunt dies and leaves you $12,000, you're not going to launch a cannabis business with $12,000. This is often hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, depending on how you want to scope the operation. It also has a lot to do with the local regulatory oversight. I mean, in some of the jurisdictions here in Southern California, they're charging $50,000 just to submit the application, and it might not be approved. $50,000, holy crap. Well, little mom and pop shops, they can't just pull a spare $50,000 out of their pockets like that, right? Whereas one of the neighboring jurisdictions wants about $3,700 for the same thing. Holy crap, what's that all about? Well, now you see why clients are hiring people like me or attorneys to help them navigate those complicated waters and say, wow, well, maybe we want to set up shop in the jurisdiction that only charges $4,000 a year to have a cannabis business license instead of the one that's going to charge us $25,000 or $50,000.
So even experts like yourself still need mentors and coaches, and that's great to hear. I think that's really important for our listeners.
Absolutely. If anybody, ego is a tricky thing. You want to get out of bed every morning with self-confidence. If you walk in just thinking that you know all this, because success in the cannabis industry takes a lot of different disciplines and professions. You got to have a good lawyer, have a good CPA, and if you're at the launch phase and you need things like business plans, content marketing, operational plans, those are my favorite. I really love the operational plans. Then you got to find someone like me to do all those too. And one piece of advice I will give to your listeners is do not spare any focus on those ancillary services, because if you do not have all of your compliance documentation in order, and I know obviously this is my sales flag, right? This is me saying, hey, you need my services, but it's true. Whether I'm here or not, you don't have to work with me. Go hire someone else. If you don't have your compliance documentation in order, you're going to get shut down. It's not going to be black helicopters these days, okay? With legal cannabis, it's going to be bureaucrats. It's going to be pencil pushers, auditors, and inspectors. In a lot of these jurisdictions, they typically have to give 24 hours notice, just 24 hours notice. Hi, it's noon on Monday. At 2 p.m. on Tuesday, we're going to knock on your door of your processing facility, and we're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Some of them don't even have to give 24 hours notice. So you can see what's going on here. If you really just don't have your act together in terms of the operation of your facility, if you've got a physical facility, and all the documentation in place. I mean, auditors, inspectors, they knock on the door for the inspection. It's like, show us your operational plan. Or what? Your operational plan. It's probably got like 50, maybe 70 pages of standard operating procedures in there. It's a really complex document. You paid some guy to write that for you. Well, guess what? If they don't give a good answer to that, they're going to be suffering fines that are so great that between what they're giving their attorney to get them out of this mess and what they're paying in fines, it might bankrupt them. It's certainly not going to put a smile on the face of the owners. Or if their missteps in terms of their regulatory compliance are great enough, they're going to get shut down right on the spot. Hey, employees, go home. You guys are shut down. Why? You're not compliant, and we're the government, and we're not dicking around. So obviously, a lot of stuff to talk about, right? Chemistry, business, politics, performance enhancement, biohacking. It's all fun stuff. And I just encourage your readers to find good sources for information like that. There's some excellent sources for this kind of content, and there's some crappy sources. So buyer beware. Try to tap into the good.
It sounds like the price of doing business with you would be less than the cost of not doing business with you.
Absolutely. Okay, let's just be totally transparent here. This operational plan we're talking about, it's a $12,000 document. It's not cheap. One of the last ones I did was 235 pages.
But what's a fine, or you get shut down, so then you're not in operation at all. So it's $12,000, or you can't work.
Yeah, I mean, they're not hiring me for my dancing or singing, right? They're hiring me it's why you pay someone to fix the brakes on your car so your car doesn't go over the cliff.
So much we covered, so much we can cover. This is great. Thanks so much for your time today.
You bet, Brian. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners. We got some exciting stuff going on there. Hopefully things will open up in New Jersey, and I'll be writing a bunch of applications for your state.
We just had an announcement. They were going to take 6 allow 6 dispensaries to open up And we got 143 or 146 applications. Now there's delays in even reviewing the application, so we'll see what lies ahead. But that'll bring us to 12 total dispensaries in this state of close to 10 million people.
And I'll go the positive route and say that's that much of a dispensary infrastructure that you didn't have a couple of years ago.
Oh, I agree.
But yeah, it's sad kind of, but between the government and making Tony Soprano happy, you guys got some additional challenges there on the East Coast.
Bada bing, bada boom, right?
Bada bing, for sure.
Thanks so much, Curt. Curt Robbins,
Hey, thanks,
check
Brian.
him out. Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, very active. Thanks so much.